Hi case fans, I'm the PC Expert Amateur and we're going to take a look at the Lian SUP01 small tower PC case.
I don't know why my voice went small, but okay, I'll work with it. So here it is. It actually is small because it is designed to have a very small footprint. So if you want a compromise between compact, small footprint, and height, this can give it to you. It's very interesting. The layout is very different from a lot of other cases, which provides a lot of unique opportunities with this case. For example, you can use a regular motherboard or you can use a back connect motherboard, which is nice because it hides cables, and in addition to that, it allows better airflow across the front of the motherboard. You can put in an ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX. They'll all fit in here. And there's so much more about this that we'll see as we go through this. In order to prepare for this video, I inspected the case myself completely, as well as looking at the Lian Li build video, which is not quite enough for me, but if you just want to see how somebody else is building it with a little bit cut out, it's a good choice. I also watched the Lobitech build, which is more verbose and shows the parts that are used, which I don't really feel that the parts that were used is really necessary, because the point is to show how to build it. But he did a good job. It was not particularly verbose either, but it was definitely better than the Lian Li one, which had no speaking in it. And then finally, I watched the one from Christopher Flanagan. He's in the UK, I believe. And he did a very verbose explanation of it while he was building it. I thought that was an excellent video that really kind of pointed out some things that I might not have noticed otherwise. I did also look at the manual, which I downloaded from the Lian Li website. And I have to say, I'm very critical of Lian Li because they tend to overcharge for some of their products. Like their fans are way overpriced many times. Because of all the thought that went into this case, for $77, I think it was a steal. Yeah, I got it during Black Friday. It was open box. It was at Micro Center. When you compare especially to a lot of other cases that are more expensive and don't offer as much, like my Corsair 5000X. It retails at over $200, often sold for like a $50 to $100 off, but I don't really think that the Corsair 5000X, aside from certain things about it that I do like it, like the airflow is pretty good, is worth $200+. I'm not sure where you draw the line, but I believe this is definitely a really good case for a lot of people, unless you want to do air cooling. In that case, you would either have to make a choice between having a CPU that does not put out a lot of heat, because the maximum height is somewhere around 88 millimeters for mounting an air cooler in this. And this is not really an air cooling case. Or you'd have to get a different case in order to accommodate a large air cooler for a very hot CPU. And since I test both water coolers and air coolers, and I'm looking for a case for my AMD build that I want to make, this isn't going to work out. But it really is exceptionally good. The footprint is pretty small, at only 212 by 403 millimeters versus the height of 534. So it's fairly tall, but it doesn't take up a lot of space. And I have seen people on the forums for tech saying, well, I want something that takes up less space. So they often opt for a micro ATX or a mini ITX case because they can't find one with a small enough footprint. This may be what you're actually looking for and will allow you to do more than you can do with a much smaller case. This is a small tower case. I'm pretty pretty psyched to show you this case. It is a really nice case. I have to applaud Lian Li on the amount of care that they put into this case. All right, I'd like to show you the accessories. Now, they were clever enough to put a black sticker on here to denote that this goes with the black case. There's also a white version. There are only two things in here. I don't know why they made such a gigantic box, but okay. This is the most interesting thing, and I'm sure some of you know what this is if you are somebody who's experienced with cases. This is for mounting a 120 millimeter fan on the back. Now, if you look right here, you can see there are two mounting points here and two mounting points here. So you would screw it in here, and since there are these slots cut in, you can actually move this left and right to optimize where the fan is either blowing or sucking air. So you could use this to have this be a back to front airflow fan, case. Whatever you want to do. So that's really nice. And you may be wondering, well, what the heck? Well, number one, it's on the back. You're not going to see it. And number two, my guess is the purpose is to prevent things from accidentally poking into there. Now, I don't mean fingers necessarily, although that would be a good thing as well, not to put your finger in there, but more like cables and stuff like that. So that's nice, even if it isn't beautiful. The other thing is the kit, and you can see there are lots of different kinds of bolts in here. We've got fan bolts and motherboard bolts and mounting bolts. There are a bunch of mounting bolts for SSDs and hard drives. There are the gaskets to mount SSDs. There's even a little pink gasket in here. I'm not really sure what that one is for. There is something that's, I think this might be for the graphics card bracket. There's an extra rubber pad. There are replacements for the pin retainers for the panels. There are some standoffs and also a standoff insertion tool, or you can also remove with it. It's got a Phillips head thing on one side, and the other side is a socket that will hold the standoff so that you can install it. So you can see that there are some other kinds of bolts in here as well for mounting like power supplies and whatnot. As you can see, it's mesh, and this is metal. And on the back side, it has a dust filter with magnets running around the outside. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they did not make it easy to pull that out, so you will need something to get, maybe if you have good fingernails, I don't, you can pull it out like that. The outer frame has got screws. If I have to take a guess, I will say that these 4 screws actually fit into these 4 holes, and then these 2 pins fit into those 2 retainers there. I guess that this was kind of like an expensive compromise way to be able to put the pins here, because otherwise the pins would be over here, and that wouldn't work out very well. So they got tabs on the bottom. Put the tabs in first and just click it into place. And this is an ARGB strip that wraps around the side there. And you see that you've got a power button and a reset button over here, but they're not this. They're these. Power, reset. I think that's very clever. I really like that idea. It's a nice little touch. My only hope is that the buttons that are behind these 2 faces are actually standard buttons that will be easy to find in case you wear them out somehow. So yeah, that's my hope. Now, there is one other thing that you may have noticed that's a little bit odd about the front. Most of the time when you open up a case, unless it's a panoramic case, you're going to see a mounting frame here for fans and or radiators. This one does not have that. That's because this one is designed to mount a graphics card here as your intake. So you're going to have the graphics card butt down with the connectors here, and there is another bracket up here you can attach to the other end to increase the stability so it's not wobbling around, especially like if you have to transport it. A lot of cases don't offer any support for graphics cards. Some offer an anti-sag, but this is one of the few cases that I'm aware of, not like I'm an expert on cases, but it's the only one that I'm aware of that actually has a bracket for the other end that protects it from wobbling in either direction. So just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, you can see this is the butt end with the connectors, and these slide into the slot holes here, and then you would screw it in like that. You can actually take this bracket down here off, install it, and then put it back in here, and that's really actually very easy to do. I have to take off this top over here. This piece up here connects to the graphics card area, but it also retains the included fan mounting frame and the mounting frame for a radiator at 5. And that comes off, and you can loosen this thumb screw. As always, factory tightened. It's very, very tight. In this current position, it only goes this far down. You can actually take this off. You can disconnect it using the thumb screw, which is for adjusting the height, but also there are 2 other small screws that are going to be annoying to remove. Make sure you have a magnetized screwdriver. Then you can take this. You'll have to relocate these 2 pieces here, which will be clamped against the graphics card. They're rubber, and take those off. So you're going to have to unscrew those 2 screws there. Take these off. Take them off this side. Flip them over to this side and screw them back in using the same screws. I just want to show you how far down this can get once you flipped it. It comes down this far. So for a 2-fan or 1-fan card, you're not going to be able to use this unless you can figure out a modification that will allow you to lower this even further, which I'm sure is possible. But if you have a longer card, then you definitely are going to want to use this to keep it stable. That's really nice. I wanted to just point out that this side of the bracket for retaining the top of the card is hitting the grommet over here for this cable access point. You have 2 choices. You can either accept that it's hitting that grommet and leave it alone, but if it's interfering with your ability to clamp down on the graphics card, you may want to cut away the rubber that it's coming into contact with. I felt a little bit silly because I just realized that I don't have to actually fully unscrew the thumb screw. All I've got to do is loosen it enough so there's enough space to get it around that. Then you can flip it like that. So that's a bit of a help. Not a great amount of help, but it helps. It's better to leave this at the very top and unscrew the 2 screws that are holding the bracket in place before you loosen the thumb screw. I'll just leave the panel for the top off, just to make it a little easier on me later. Just to clarify, if you have it down here, you can have up to a 400mm graphics card, and if you have it up here, you can have up to a 380mm graphics card. In order to take this bracket off so you can use it, you need to actually remove this 1 screw here, and then you'll be able to slide it over to the left. If the bracket is in this location, the size of the graphics card that you can mount here is a maximum of 380mm. If you, however, slide it out, and make sure you slide it evenly because there are screws going into slots on this side as well, you'll want to put it into the deep one, and that'll give you an extra 20mm, or in other words, you can do a card up to 400mm long, and it can be up to 4 slots thick. So that's pretty cool. So then you'll want to screw it back into place. Also, the fact that you've got these long slots here allows you to determine how far to the left or right the graphics card will be. So that can be a benefit as well in terms of airflow and also symmetry if you're concerned about that, even though nobody will probably notice it from the glass side of the case. Returning to the left side, which some people think of as the front, even though really it's traditionally not the front. This has always been the front until they started using glass panels. So to open this, you just pull on this tab here. There are 2 tabs and slots at the bottom, but you don't want to let go. And they were thoughtful enough to use rubber along these 2 surfaces to protect the glass and the metal from each other, because the metal is painted and the glass can break. And it's held in place with both a screw on each side here, as well as these pins. And again, the pins fit into here, the screws fit into here, and there's a slot here and here for the tabs. And as you can see, you can also access the graphics card bracket here. Now notice I'm not saying GPU. Do you know why I'm not saying GPU? Because GPU is the graphics processing chip that's built into one small part of the graphics card here, like right there. It is not the same thing as the graphics card. This is the graphics card. The chip, the GPU, is right in this area here. So to call this a GPU is just ignorant. And I know everybody does it, even the big techers. I don't care. They're wrong. I want to point out to you something a little bit weird. Watch my hand. Huh! Somebody's hand is coming up out of the computer! Oh, wait. It's just a mirror. They decided to do a clever little trick for covering up the storage compartment. This is actually a storage compartment for a couple of SSDs. In order to remove this, all you gotta do is unscrew this one screw here, lift it up on this side, slide it a little bit to the right, and there you go. Now in order to mount SSDs here, you will need to use the proper bolts with the grommets, and once you attach the bolts and grommets to the SSD, you'll plunk it down into the larger part of the hole and then slide it backwards a little bit so the grommet fits into the smaller part of the hole. That's the most important thing for you to be aware of there. And as you can see, it's a little bit awkward. There we go. I think that's kind of nifty. It's not really particularly functional since they didn't slant the mirror, which I think would have been much more interesting. There's definitely the space to have slanted it. I don't know why they didn't think of that, because that would have made a much more interesting visual effect. But hey, I'm not the designer. We have lots of places for cables. We have the grommeted space here, and here, here, and here. Plus, for the back connectors, we have these other spots here. These 2. And then we have some more cable spaces all the way up here. So there's lots of ways to get cables in and around your motherboard. This is for connecting to the graphics card slot. So this is actually temporarily connected over here. You can unscrew it, and then you can plug this into your motherboard. It does have ARGB, so there is actually a cable that's coming out here, and that is going to be connected to the ARGB hub that's down below, as well as this strip here. This and this are for controlling the mode and the color of the ARGB here and here. This is a combo audio jack, USB 3.1 Type-C, and USB 3.0 Type A. You can actually remove this surface. There are screws that you'll have to access around here and around there, although I don't know why you'd want to go through the hassle of doing it. There is also Velcro here in order to hold cables that are coming in there. So that's pretty nice. Now you can't put an ATX motherboard in here, but the SSI EB would fit in here about this side. The back is a little bit different, as you probably noticed before. First of all, we have these 4 mounting points for the external fan mount. Second of all, we have a power supply mounting frame. So all you have to do is to loosen up these 2 captive screws, and then you can attach this to the back side of your power supply. Screw that in here, 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 and here, and then you can slide the power supply and cables in through that way, which makes it a lot easier. I wish every case had one of these, because it's so much better than trying to slide it in this way, especially when there's a power supply shroud in the way. It also makes it nicer if you have to run larger cables past the power supply. You can just pull the power supply out without disconnecting anything, run them up to the motherboard or wherever they're going to go, and then reinsert the power supply. So I love this on cases. This here is, because we're mounting the graphics card on the opposite end, you'll want to run your HDMI, DP, or whatever cable through here to the graphics card on the other end. These Velcro straps are for cables, obviously, to help keep that back area nice and neat. This happens to be for the ARGB. These are for cards that you would install in the other slots, but not for a graphics card. As you can see, they're rather too short for that. This back part is not actually removable. The uniqueness does not end on the right-hand side. Now we have another metal mesh side. Same mounting. It's got the screws, the tabs, and the pins. We've got 5 pins this time. So we've got screw, pin, 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 screw, pin, screw. And then, of course, down here, the tabs actually fit into the feet. Now, one of the things that I wish they'd done a little bit differently was to make the feet taller. This does not have any dust filter on it, because you are probably going to want to be using these fans as exhaust. That's what they are intended for. They are not put in here to be intake. Also, for whatever reason, they decided that the radiator, which will be mounted here, will also be on exhaust. So you're getting all of your intake through the graphics card, and then you're getting exhaust out through here and here. I'm not entirely convinced that's going to provide enough intake. So you may end up with it just in the default configuration without an external fan over here. You may end up having to do more dusting than you would if there were more intake positions. Here is the other end of the graphics card cable. By the way, this is generation 4. So if you have a Gen 5 graphics card, you'll need to find a way to replace this cable. And you can remove it. I just don't know how easy it'll be to find a Gen 5 cable that is as long as this one. You would take this and you'd run it down to here so it can plug into the graphics card. You can do up to a 360 millimeter radiator on this side here. Unfortunately, you will not be able to replace these fans with larger fans, and in fact, when I was looking at it, you may have noticed what I noticed, in that these spaces here are not square. It's actually narrower this way than this way, which means you're cutting off a tiny amount of airflow here and here. It shouldn't make much of a difference, but it will make a little bit of a difference. And these are pretty good fans. These 3 fans have an RPM range of 300 to 1800, 2.56 millimeters of water for static pressure, and 68.88 cubic feet per minute for the airflow. They're almost, per my humble opinion, good enough for radiators. But personally, I recommend at least 3 millimeters of water in order to access this area easily. I mean, unless you really like making things difficult. We do have all these Velcro straps everywhere. There are these two, and then we've got 1, 2 more there. We've got another one over here. We've got another one over. Well, let me just show you how to access that more easily. First of all, you'll want to take off the top, and then you'll take this piece off. Now you can unscrew this to access the radiator frame. If you're just going to be mounting a radiator here, or I suppose you could put fans on here as well. 120 and 140 would work. You're going to want to just take it off like that and mount them and then put them back on. Please note that when you unscrew it, this is not going to flop out on its own. And the reason is at the bottom, the tabs at the bottom are protected by some rubber. This one also has the same thing, by the way. Now, in order to remove this one, we have to unscrew here. That's going to stay like that until you're ready to pull it out. As you can see, these are not ARGB fans. Now we get a better look at the cable management. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we've got an ESP clip over here for cables. I wish they had more than one ESP clip. I really like these things much better than Velcro. And we have got a single tie down there. Underneath for cabling, you've got a hook here and a hook here. You could take the Velcro that's on the back side here and turn it around so it's mounted on the inside. It'll just take some length away from the Velcro, but it's still possible to do that. Aside from that, and the obvious cable holes that I mentioned earlier, there are 2 more hooks on that side for the ARGB cables. And the hub for some of this stuff is on the other side of the dual bay. The cabling for these fans is extremely short. If you notice, they made this part coming out fairly long. Unfortunately, the connector on this side is very, very barely poking out of the fan, which makes it quite difficult to connect these things together. It's really annoying. And that is a ding against Lian. There we go. Now I'm going to have to struggle to put that back together. But it is a JST connector of some kind. 4-pin. I didn't actually need to do that. It came loose. In order to remove this, you can pull that out. Then you're able to mount a 2.5-inch or a 3.5-inch drive here. In the instructions, they do recommend that you use both these little pins for holding the 3.5-inch drive in place, as well as using some screws to help mount it securely. If you want to actually take this out, however, you're going to have to turn this on its side. One thing that may be slightly problematic depending on the AIO you buy is the fact that you will have to mount the radiator back here with the tubes at the top. If you've got the pump positioned here or the pump is on the tubes, either way, if the pump is at the top of the loop, it's going to cause an accumulation of air in the pump, which will eventually destroy it. Do not buy an AIO with a pump on the tube end of the radiator or on the tubes next to the radiator, because the air will accumulate there and destroy the pump. Now you can see from the other direction what the top graphics card bracket looks like. The bottom one. There is a pair of long rubber supports for the power supply, so you don't have to worry about being off center when you're trying to screw it in, which can cause you to strip the holes, being an unfortunate thing. For the cables, we have USB 3.1, USB 3.0. This is the audio. We also have the front panel, so it's all contained in one little thing there. We have ARGB, and of course then there's the SATA power for the hub and the extension for the PWM. So we go from a regular PWM standard connector to the JST. So I just want to show you the difference. To get it to focus, so yeah, they're different. You cannot plug these together. I like that they curled this over. I'm not sure if there's a functional reason for it, or if it's for structural support, or if it's just to take away one of the sharp edges. But I like that idea. I'm surprised to see that the motherboard tray actually has a screw here and a screw here. So overall, I'm really impressed with how Lian Li designed this. I think they put a lot of thought into the design and the layout of different parts to optimize airflow. I think it's a little bit odd that they're using the graphics card as the main intake, because normally graphics cards don't have their fans running a lot, because usually conditions are such that it's not very hot for the graphics card. To do that, to me, is a little bit counterintuitive, but it works, apparently. I figured out the trick to be able to reconnect this quickly, and you get one finger, and you thumb through there, and then you hold on to it, and then you plug it in, and that makes it really easy to do. I can now tuck this stuff out of the way. One of the downsides of this case is that if you want to do a custom water loop, it really doesn't provide a lot of space for that. This is really, in my opinion, designed for a single radiator AIO. I look at screws and bolts at Fleet Farm. It was not like this when I unscrewed it, so I'm not sure why it's now problematic. For some reason, the holes of the plate and these two pieces do not line up correctly now. The other holes are lining up just fine. So I think the culprit is these two. Maybe it's the legs with the rubber causing them to be off kilter with this problem. When you want to install this, you're going to want to look for the mesh lip. The pin side only matches the back, and the pin and screw side matches the front. It's not designed to be reversible. It just snaps back in place. I guess the only thing left to do for you is to let you see the lighting. There are 2 screws that retain it, as well as 4 tabs that run through. Such a nice screwdriver. Not perfect. I mean, this thing comes off way too easily now. Once you've got that done, there's this button here. You push that, and you can easily pull this out. You have this half bay here, and you can mount a 3.5-inch drive. This one doesn't use grommets. You can put the grommets here and mount a 2.5-inch instead. In order to be able to do that, you will have to separate the half bay from the bottom bay. And as usual, because it's come from the factory, it's been very, very much tightened down. But once you've loosened up that captive screw, then you have free access to be able to put in the grommets and the mounting bolts. This is held in place with a couple of tabs as well as the captive thumb bolt. And this does already have the grommets installed on the side for the 3.5-inch, so you need to use bolts. This is the bottom. Congratulations on finally seeing its bottom. Please don't be embarrassed about that. This is supposed to be the dust filter for the power supply. Unfortunately, they made a little mistake. And I don't know why they didn't correct this, because it would have been easy to do. All they would have had to do is put a piece of rubber here and put a piece of rubber here to block those holes. These 2 holes are now a significant way for dirty air to bypass the dust filter. How well that's going to happen depends on the degree of resistance of the dust filter versus this space here, but it will happen. That means that your power supply will get dustier because of this. But at least this is not as bad as the one on my Corsair 5000X, which does absolutely nothing because it's too loosely seated to work. The only other thing I can say is I wish that these feet were taller, and I wish that they had the rubber bolted into the foot rather than having it held in place with adhesive, because those things just come off if you're moving your case around. One of the other things I don't like about the Corsair 5000X is that it uses captive thumb screws to hold the dual drive bay. It uses captive thumb bolts, but the captive thumb bolts are here. And when you've got a bunch of cables in this area and you're trying to loosen them, it's extremely difficult to get in there without having to disconnect cables and maybe even pull out the power supply. So it's a really inept design. All right, so I've got it connected up with the fans and with the ARGB, as you can see. So I want you to listen for the fans, first of all. They are kind of loud. They are at maximum speed right now. Doesn't bother me, but might bother you. You're right above them. So that's what those sound like. And we can see that there's this nice strip running around the bottom here, plus the strip on the graphics cable. We can change the modes. We can change the colors with the C button. And then there's this mode. Change the colors again. Unfortunately, my camera does not show colors particularly well, so I apologize. What I'm seeing is much better than what you're seeing. And then the next mode has the line bouncing around, although for some reason the behavior of the strip here is inconsistent with the one down below. We can change the colors. And then there's this mode. Try changing the colors. So it moves very slowly for some reason. I believe there are things you can do with the long press. This rainbow mode does not allow for color changing. If you happen to know of a good, inexpensive camera that'll show the colors correctly, let me know. So now I can show you the lights in all their splendor. This actually is very similar to what I'm seeing, although there's a lot of, what is it called, bloom from my phone. So you can see that the ARGB channel goes along here, and then there's another one that is supposed to be coordinated with this. But what I'm seeing is kind of a bit of off coordination. What I would have liked to have seen is for it to go across here and then be going that way. Or at the very least, the colors would actually be in sync instead of the colors up here leading the colors down here. So that's a little bit annoying. This is the graphics card connector that goes to the motherboard. There are the buttons down here for mode and color. Mode and color. This is rainbow. Rainbow doesn't really allow you to do anything with it. Long press. All right, here we go. So we can change the color. We can also go to other modes. There aren't a lot of different modes, but there's a new one. Kind of like a pulse, right? You know, in a way. And then this one. I like how they're actually synced with this one. All right, so that, if you do a long press, it changes to the solid colors. So a nice array of solid colors. We'll go back to the other way with the light modes. Now we can see this one is just bouncing around back and forth. It's not paying any attention or mimicking or anything the movement of this light bar, and that I find kind of annoying in a small way. So lots of choices. And then there's this one. Which seems to be changing colors very, very slowly. And we're back to this one. Now I believe if you do a long press, it locks the mode. That's what it seems to do, because now the buttons aren't doing anything. I wish that holding it, the longer you held it down, the faster it would cycle. But yeah, it doesn't do that. I do not like this going there. In fact, it just reverted back when I did a long press. That's weird. Yeah. Anyway, so there are a bunch of different modes and colors, short presses and long presses. And now that you've seen that, I want you to hear the fans. So come a little bit closer. This is the front of the case and the top and the left side and the right side. So obviously, if you're going to have this with the right side facing you, it's going to be the loudest. And that concludes this demonstration of the fan sound and the lights. I want to talk to you for a minute, or maybe 2, or 3, or 10, or 100 minutes. So overall, I think this is a fantastic case. There are some minor things about it that I think could have been improved upon, but all told, I think that the changes are not entirely necessary. The only thing that I would do would be to bring the USB up to 3.2 for all 3 of the ports. Lian Li really did a great job on this case. I think they did much better than the 011 dynamic that they did with Gerbauer. No offense to Roman, but I just didn't feel that one was nearly as well thought out as this one was. I can't use this for my testing because it only takes water coolers really, and I can't really test my large air coolers. Most of my air coolers are too tall for this case. And I have chosen a very hot CPU, the 7900X from AMD. I'd like to ask you, what do you think about this case? It's easy to build in. Do you think it would be easy for you to build in? Do you think that there are aspects of it that are going to be problematic for you? This is kind of a more of a niche case than most of the other cases that I've reviewed, in that it's not really designed for a custom water cooling loop. It's not designed for air cooling. and the way it handles the airflow is a bit odd compared to a lot of other cases. I would have loved it if they had also provided a mesh panel for this side, because I don't need to see inside. My computer, what's in the box, can be a black box for all I care with mesh, because I don't need to see inside it when I'm using it. And when I do need to see inside of it, I remove the cover. And especially with this one being tinted glass, it really makes the glass even less useful. So I would personally prefer a mesh side. Checking on PC Part Picker, the cheapest I can find for the SUP01 is $100, no shipping cost from Newegg sellers. And the other places, regular Newegg is $122, no shipping. Amazon is $135.07, no shipping. B&H is $140 with no shipping cost, and Adorama is $150. I would go with Newegg sellers because they're the cheapest, and I hate Amazon. Prices in other countries, Canada, Europe, whatever, are going to be different. You may pay more, you may pay less. Do you think it's worth it? Would you be interested in buying it? If so, why? Would you like it in a different color? Not just black or white. Is there another color you'd like to see available for this product? What would you put in it? What would you use it for? I would love if you have used a SUP01 to tell us about your experience with it. What was good about it? What was bad about it? It would be very helpful to know that. And again, you can check out Robitech's video, Chris Flanagan's video, and of course the Lian Li build video, which has no conversation and it is just this guy putting it together. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Need to ask for your help. I'm sorry. On December 11th, 2024, Amazon terminated me and used false accusations against me. And on December 17th, I had my left shoulder operated on. I'm getting a lot better. I can do some things with my hand and my arm, but it's still pretty limited. If you could please help me out by liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, and turning on notifications for my channels, that would really help. If you want to help me financially and you can afford to, you can go to my Glenn's Fast Reviews and you can do a super thanks as a donation there. If you want to donate on a monthly basis, you can become a member there. And or you can go to patreon.com/GLENNMII. So thank you for that. Also, I'd like to say thank you to bleepingcomputer.com for allowing me to post messages on their forum about my videos. Thank you so much. And don't forget to visit them. They offer a lot of wonderful resources for people who are using computers. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.